Welcome to Authentic Conversations with Ryan James Miller. Join Ryan as he speaks with top business leaders and influencers, and hear how they've mastered the art of authenticity to achieve all that they dreamed of. As you hear from these leaders, seek not only to be inspired by their authenticity, but to strive for and master your own.
All right, welcome everybody to another episode of the podcast. I have with me today Derek Doepker. He helps businesses increase sales using content. And so you hear me talk a lot about the importance of content, what that means, how we tell our story. And for many of you, Derek and I were actually just talking about this before we jumped in. You know, for many of you, the challenge is you may own a business or you may be representing a business at a high level and you're trying to understand how to navigate the waters of telling your own story, all the while supporting the organization you work for. So I'm looking forward to getting into that today. But for now, Derek, welcome to the podcast, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Ryan.
Awesome. So content is and we're just jumping right in, right? Like content is this huge, oftentimes ambiguous statement, right? It's like content. What is that? Well, it's a whole lot of things. But when people approach you and they say, hey, you know, I hear that you do content, you help people with their content, driving revenue. What is it that you typically break down for them into some sort of simple terms that they can understand?
Yeah, so it's funny because even for me, content, it is that kind of ambiguous thing, like content. Okay, so it's even kind of like the term marketing. Like I think, you know, if you get more experience, you can wrap your head around marketing. But when people come to me and they're like, I struggle with marketing, I'm like, that can mean a lot of things. Let's get a little more specific. So, you know, content, if we were to define it before even getting into, you know, why it's important, how to create it, all that sort of stuff. Content, if you think about really, it's what people are consuming. So that can be, I like to think of the senses, right? The written content, you see it, you know, what do you see here in terms of videos, articles, a podcast like this is a piece of content. YouTube video is a piece of content. An Instagram post, a Facebook post is a piece of content. An email that you send out to your audience is a piece of content. Right. And if you even want to get not necessarily content marketing specifically, but I think it's useful to think about anytime you're opening your mouth and you're talking to someone, that is an opportunity to create content. And Gary Vee actually would be a good example of this. Like, just bring a film crew and everything is now content. Like any conversations he's having, answering questions, all of that is now a possibility of creating this content. And, we can dive deeper into why content, but there's the saying content is king. And that's really, if I were to have to summarize it as one core purpose, it's to build the know, like, and trust factor. You know, people get to know, like, and trust you as the individual, if you're a salesperson, if you're part of the staff, but it's also know, like, and trust your business overall when people have more choices than ever. So people are kind of like, it's like dating someone. Like, I kind of want to get to know you a little bit. And the content is like, here's a little bit about us, your philosophy. People get to know you through your content. And then once you build that know, like, and trust, then it opens up the possibility for now the sales process.
Okay. So I appreciate so many things that you said in there. One of the big things is know, like, and trust, right? So it's this age-old adage that salespeople have been told for an eternity, right? Forever. It's like, you know, people have to know you, like you, trust you in order to buy from you. What's been interesting for me is over the course of my sales career has been 20 years now, 21 years. I've watched people go from this desire to have people independently know, like, and trust them to having people know, like, and trust their business or the corporate brand, which I know that's important too, but I keep trying to pull people back into, like, we do business with people, right? I don't do business with a company. And so do you see that as a common challenge when you're in the space trying to help people create content, tell their own story? Do you feel that there's that tension there, trying to bring people back to like an individualized know, like, and trust versus just the corporate one?
Yeah. So people, and this is a shift that happened for me. And I'll say this, even though it's not directly related to creating your own content, it's an important mindset shift, which is, I think when I am wanting to pitch a company, you know, if you're a salesperson, you want to connect with a company, and I think about, okay, I'm going to pitch this business, and that's really hard. And I'll make it practical. So I wrote for success.com, and I want to pitch success to feature me in them. That is hard for the brain to wrap around. And what the shift was, is I go, no, you're not pitching this company. You're pitching the editor, who is a human being who I can look up by name. I can see, in this case, it was a woman, what she values, what she's all about. Now, all I got to do is connect with her, one of the decision makers, and that shifts your whole focus. So, I mean, in sales, you're connecting with people, and the prospect is connecting with you. You're connecting with them. And as human beings, we're hardwired to connect with other humans one-on-one, not these ambiguous sort of nebulous brands or whatever. So even, a practical thing, a lot of times when sending emails, this isn't an absolute, but if you can make your email from a person, you know, even if it's someone at the company, that creates a deeper psychological connection. So now for you as an individual person, I'm with you, Ryan, like you want to have that personal connection. And yes, it is important for them to get to know the brand and, you know, kind of the overarching company and things like that. But first, I tend to think, based off of human psychology, that you're going to be better off in most instances for people to connect with you. And I remember, for some reason, I'm thinking of a car salesperson, a story. I don't remember the man's name offhand, but, you know, one of the top car salespeople, and people don't come in and go, I want to buy from this dealership necessarily, as much as they're thinking, I'm just going to use the name Bob. I want to buy from Bob. I know Bob takes care of me. Bob's a good guy, you know, or Susan, or insert the name, right? You really trust that salesperson. And when you build that bond with that person, then you're like, okay, now let me know. Now they can, when they talk about the company, you trust the person first. And now when they edify the company, you're more likely to believe them and trust what they have to say about the company overall.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah. I'm glad you said that, because that's the way I feel. And so now we're on the same page. Okay. So you wrote this book, Content That Sells. You talk about these 5 formulas. Like, is that one of them? What are those 5 formulas? Like, how do people begin to understand, and maybe there's a step back before the formulas, but how do people begin to consider what content is right for me? Because I think that's the step before, let me go do content, right? Or let me go create content.
Yeah. So this is the whole question. What do I say? What do I put out there? What do I create now today? So what's important? And there's a lot of different pieces of content that you can create. The 5 formulas, when I look at it, I go, what are the most common things in the most universal formulas that are intriguing and compelling, and that are going to work for the most different types of businesses? So I often work with more service-based businesses and even individual entrepreneurs and salespeople and stuff like that, but it could work for a brick and mortar business too. So I go, what's going to have the most universal application? That's the 5 formulas, which happen to go through some or all of them, depending on the time. But as an example, one of the formulas is a story, story-based content. Now that's not like new or anything. These aren't like, big revelations like, oh, I've never heard of using a story before, but like how you use the story and what stories you tell, that can be there could be endless content around that. So you have your individual story. That could be if you've struggled with something that the prospect or your customers have struggled with, and you can relate and empathize with them and share, that's why you're in this business. That's why you're doing what you're doing. That's one example. Obviously, customer success stories, testimonials are great. And that's one of those things, like you're almost always safe putting out content that are stories of people just like your ideal customers and the experience that they had, right? But it's more than just a testimonial. It's more than just someone saying, this company is the greatest, right? It's, let's just take like an example I gave is like a printing company because I had gone to a printing company. I go, let me just pick some like random company that I've never worked with, but I went to a printer. So let me just pick a printing company. Okay. So one of our customers needed to get, it could tell a story of a customer who came in, who had a wedding and needed to get these wedding invitations made. So you could tell that story, maybe the struggle that this bride-to-be was having and how what the process was like working with this printer, how they got everything printed out and now have this, all these beautiful wedding invitations sent out. So you can tell these stories as part of your content. And even another form of content, record videos of you talking to your customers and their experience and actually taking through 5-10 minutes of content about someone sharing, I was struggling. I sometimes work with personal trainers too. So like, before I found you, I had all the, obstacles and I was so busy and this and that. And, I found you, here's what you showed me. And, now I'm in the best shape of my life. Right. And you actually have that on video as a form of content so people can hear from your customers. So that's one example of a piece of content, the customer success story. And another example of a story, and this is really good. And you get a lot of psychological leverage with this, but I don't think as many people use it. And that is the cautionary tale. That is this story of someone who didn't use your product, didn't use your service, didn't follow the advice, someone who is like a warning story and all the horrible things that happened to them. So let's say it's one of my clients is a therapist. So I'm thinking of a therapist, like someone who didn't manage their stress levels and like all the negative consequences. And it's like, that's why I teach the importance of meditation or whatever. Right. So you point out the consequences of someone who doesn't follow what it is that you teach or what you recommend. And I remember it was I think it was a car rental company. They just had like some picture of maybe like an accident or something that happened. And then when they're about to sell like insurance and like, you see like, yeah, this is a person, they didn't get the insurance, it cost them however many thousands of dollars. And you see it, it's like, oh, it's like, so now do you want to buy some insurance? It's like here, the story. Yeah. So the story sets up the, like, people tend to be motivated by, negativity, like avoiding pain. So now you can use that, pain avoidance. And this could be real stories. It can be parables. This is where you can open up the whole box of different types of content. But it's more important for me to just get the psychology across of the reason why you're doing it is you're showing them through story format what you want to avoid and what's possible for you using a product or service.
Okay, so this seems, I don't necessarily want to say common sense, but this is really straightforward in the sense of these are very accessible areas to create content. Telling my own story, like it's mine, right? Like I know me. So there's one. Number two is client success stories. We've all got those. If we've been in business for any period of time, I can tell a story about a way I helped a client. Third one, possibly and probably, I can tell a story or at least create an analogy to the consequences of not working with me and what could happen as the result. So the big question already, and I know this is on everybody's mind that is listening, is I have access to so much content. Why don't people create it?
So you pointed something out, and that is, some of this is common sense. Like if I tell you these are different types of content to create, you may have created it in the past and you probably have seen it thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of times over the course of your life through just billboards, being on social media, all these different things. So one of the reasons why people don't create it is there's actually a process. Like it's one thing to intellectually know, I can create this stuff. It's another thing to be in this mindset of everything is content. So here's what I mean. If I'm having a conversation with a prospective client, like I want to record as much stuff as possible with people's permission, but you got to take this extra step where, let's say it's a story of a customer, and Actually, I give a real example with Subway with, because Jared became the big face of Subway for a period of time. Like, someone at Subway saw his results and was like, I don't remember the exact story, so don't quote me on this, but essentially it was someone at Subway had to recognize, whoa, wait a second. Like, you've lost a lot of weight. What's going on? And they actually had to ask him his story, and then to be like, hey, we need to do something with this. We need to like turn this into a story. So part of it is you actually have to like tune your awareness to, if someone sends you a message, an email, like, oh, I had a great, results with your product, or I got your whatever. And it's like, oh, tell me more about that, please. Would you be open to hopping on a Zoom call, 15, 20 minutes to talk about that? Like, you actually need to take these steps, this initiative to recognize the story, pull out the content from that. And that's just talking about stories. So you get in this habit, and every time I'm on a call with someone and they ask a question about business or what I'm doing, I go, if they have that question, someone else has that question. That needs to be an email, that could go on an FAQ, that could be a video that I do, all of that. So now everything that's showing up, questions, conversations with your customers, with prospects, if you're on a sales call, any objection you've handled on a sales call is a piece of content now. It's an email, it's a video, it's a post. I was on a sales call with a client and they asked about blah, blah, blah. And well, this is a common misconception that a lot of people have. And here's why. And now you're busting that myth that people have, which is another form of content, is myth busting. So it takes a bit of a mindset in the process where you just start to go, everything can be a piece of content. And it's not sitting there always trying to come up with it from scratch, because that's actually what can shut a person down, and certainly myself, is if I sit there and I go, let's say I'm going to write an email. What do I want to write about? And it's like my mind goes blank. It's like there's so many things, and yet then there's nothing that comes up. So it's this paradox. And so instead of doing that, I go, what's something interesting that I just saw in a movie that I could talk about and tie it back to this a business principle? What's an article I read? What's a conversation I just had with a customer? What's a question someone just asked me? And even going into forums and going, what are people asking about in this industry? So I'm just going to say like a yoga studio. And you go into like a yoga, let's say you own a yoga studio and you go into a yoga forum, like what are the common questions that people ask about trying to find a yoga studio to go to? Maybe our place is open. Maybe it's about yoga techniques or whatever it is. And you look for the inspiration. And then now, instead of trying to generate something from scratch, you're just looking at the catalyst, if you will, of the things that are sparking ideas and the things that you're already talking about and interacting with people about. And then that gets you into the ideas of what you can create. And then it's just a matter, another thing is, how do you make it as easy as possible on yourself? So I'm a writer. I write books. A lot of who I work with are actually authors. I consider a book to be like one of the ultimate forms of content marketing. And so if you're not a writer, again, like Gary Vee, going back to that example, okay, just get someone, hey, just film me, because I'll be talking about stuff and something will come out. So just film me, or recording the conversations, or, having a tape recorder and speaking into it if that's what you do better. Or, talking to a prospect and be like, hey, can you just like ask me your 10 biggest questions about this business, and I'll just answer them. And then put yourself into the circumstances where you are naturally unleashed and things come out of you, and then that can spark the content creation process.
Yeah. No, I love all of the ideas that you shared there. Again, I can still, hear people and just visualize people really struggling with, okay, so I've got all these ideas, where do I start? I know for me, it's much easier for me to record video than it is to write. I'm not a great writer. Sometimes when I'll write, I'll actually voice to text just to get my thoughts out and then go back and clean it up. I actually do have a videographer that follows me around 4 hours a week or something like that. He records interactions with clients, sometimes even sitting in an office right now watching me record a podcast. And so he's capturing content. We do a vlog, we cut that up. So, you know, there's all these different ways to do it. Where are some simple places that people can start? So you kind of gave this breakdown of, okay, you have 3 ways to tell a story. And I know this is not necessarily your formula, but just kind of tracking the conversation. So just 3 things you can pull from right away, right? Kind of your own personal story, client interactions, and kind of warnings, you know, against or the consequences of not working with you. Then you go in, then you started talking about, you know, kind of gaining an idea for what people are talking about in the industry that you're serving in. So there's another way that you can kind of grab some content. So as all of these thoughts are running through somebody's head, it's like, okay, so now I can kind of think about the type of content I want to create in terms of it itself. We're not even to medium yet, but how can they harness that? Like, are there some simple, practical ways that they can start jotting down ideas, or I don't know, like creating boards, or like, are there things that they can do to start harnessing that content and organizing it in some fashion?
Yeah, so let's start with harnessing it, you know, gathering it, and then organizing it. So there is a process, and whether it's for content creation or creating just about anything else, the metaphor or example I give, it's like you're going to a store and you're getting a bunch of different ingredients. You know, you're grabbing ingredients, you're grabbing spices, and you have all these things, and you fill up your cupboards with the ingredients. Then after that, you go, okay, let's pull this thing from my cupboard and let's take this other thing and mix it together. So I like to get the ideas and gather a lot of ideas first. And the way that looks for me personally, and we can each find our own process, but for me, anytime if I'm listening to a podcast, or if I'm watching a show, or if I have anything that just, I get like kind of an aha from, I have a takeaways document, and I go, oh, that's something about that resonated with me. I can share a story about that, or I can share like, hey, I was listening to this podcast the other day and I heard this great tip, and, you know, this is relevant for you and your business because of blah, blah, blah. And so I'm always just looking for ideas. And, you know, if I hear good stories, if I heard Damon John give like tell a story on a talk, and I go, oh, that's kind of cool. I can share that. Like, hey, I heard Damon John share this thing. And, you know, so I'm talking to entrepreneurs about it who I know are going to resonate with it. So I'm always just having your antennas up and creating, for me, it's a Google Doc where I'm just dropping ideas in constantly of stories, I've heard questions, insights I've gotten, things like that. And then when I go to create content, if I want to create a video, write an email or something, I can now skim through that and go, oh, what am I inspired today? And, you know, sometimes there's a certain purpose I'm trying to do, like a promotion or something in a business, but sometimes I'm just going through and seeing what's in this document that is now, I don't know how many pages, you know, probably 20, 30 plus pages of just all kinds of ideas and notes and stuff. So that's getting the ingredients, you know, having all that. The double-edged sword is that the more I talk about ways of creating content, the more we chat about this, of all the ways to create content and different things, we haven't even skimmed the surface, the more you could go into, well, now it's paralysis by analysis. There's so many things I could do. Where do I begin? And that's where I say, you know, pick one thing. And, you know, and I give the 5 formulas. There's more than 5, but that's just to make it simple. And I'll even just say 3. So go with mistakes. What are common mistakes that people make in your industry that your prospects might make? That could be mistakes about, do you want to give an example business? I could roll with that.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, do you have an example business in mind, like a salesperson or someone that runs a certain type of business, or?
Yeah. So let's see here. I guess I would say, so a lot of the people that I work with are, so there's a lot of people in the insurance industry. And so by using the wrong advisor, it can end up costing them, their company, a lot of money and create a lot more headaches. So that's a big challenge that a lot of people face in the insurance world.
Okay, so I'm just going to say, like, if you're doing insurance, let's say you're selling insurance. Okay, so what are common mistakes people make when they're buying insurance? What would the prospects make? So if you're the insurance salesperson and your prospects are people who are going to buy insurance, or right, that's very basic way of looking at it. So what are the mistakes people make? Even one of the mistakes is, why do people even not buy insurance? Maybe they don't get insurance, and why that's a mistake. What are the mistakes people make when they are shopping for insurance? What are the mistakes people make when looking for someone to sell them insurance? Like who they go to, who they trust, how to watch out for people who might be trying to rip you off, right? Like, so like, what are all these mistakes that people can make? Maybe after people buy insurance, are there mistakes that people make after the fact, right? And things that you want to do. What are mistakes that might affect how much you have to pay for insurance? And I don't know much about the insurance sales world, but I'd guess that there's probably certain mistakes people are making in their everyday life that might increase the cost of how much they're paying.
So I have a question about that, about this whole idea of mistakes. I love this because I think there's a lot there. Do you feel like you should attempt to build a level of trust with your audience before you really lean into the mistakes? And I'll kind of show my cards. It's because I often find that until I trust the person that's speaking to me, I'm not necessarily going to believe what they say, or even if they bring up a mistake, I'm not necessarily going to be like, oh, I should talk to them more about how I fix it, because I don't really know them. Like I feel like a lot of people lead with that. Like, you're making a mess by working with this person or by doing this, this, and this. But if you work with us, it's like, I don't even know you. How, like, first of all, are you telling the truth? Second of all, can you back it up? You know what I mean? Like, is there any, I don't know, method to that madness? Or no, you feel like there's just some common things you can talk about? Like, how do you view that?
Yeah, so you bring up an important distinction. So there's mistakes at various stages in the process. So you might say it's a buying mistake about who you buy insurance from. Let's just say it's like that. And you go, if you're buying insurance from these types of people, that's wrong. You need to buy insurance from me, right? That very clearly seems to be kind of a self-serving type of agenda, where people might go, well, I need to trust you first before I believe that. But if you point out a mistake early on in the process of like, where it's just very helpful, and with any of these things. So here's another key with content. So let's lay the foundation that claims need to be backed up with an equal or greater amount of proof. So you're not just saying this is a mistake. You're saying like, you have some, this is where stories can help. You're actually showing them, like, you don't have to believe me. Like, look at the evidence. You're actually presenting the evidence of how this is a mistake. And the more you can have the proof to support it, that's the first thing, regardless of what you're trying to do. And then the mistakes in terms of, like, let's say, because I work with a lot of personal trainers, I'm going to go with this since I know the common things. It's like, it's not going to start out with the mistakes when hiring a personal trainer. Every other trainer sucks. You need to hire me. That's not the angle. It's the mistakes you're making, like with your fitness and your health. And like, okay, so here's a really common exercise mistake people make. Like, you're trying to use this form, and here's why this is bad for your shoulders. And here's this, it's a really common thing that people do in the gym. And if you adjust it like this, give it a shot, you'll see that your shoulders feel a lot better. And people are like, oh, that worked. I kind of trust this person. Now it's building the trust because you've helped avoid pain for them. You've shown them something. If they can demonstrate it themselves and actually prove it, then that's the kind of thing. And so you're kind of working your way up towards then the mistake about, who you should buy from or whatever. Or, a thing it can be is like, watch out for these common scams. And if you can show like, hey, here's common scams in this industry, watch out for them, and not even trying to push your thing every second there about they're all scams. It's no, here's some common scams. Here's what to watch out for. Here's what this this undercover report found, like you have evidence, you have statistics and things all backing it up. And then at the very end, it's like, so make sure you go with a company that is, Better Business Bureau, I can't even say it, accredited. Like you have like all the criteria that you want to look for. And if you want to hear more about what we do, here's where you can find out more. Yeah. So it's like a very subtle way where by the end of it, people start to go, wow, I've learned so much. I would have gotten screwed over if I didn't know some of this, maybe. And well, now that I trust you because you've been looking out for me, yeah, I'll kind of look more into what you're all about.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. So something else that comes to mind when I think about content, this is a question that I get asked often, and I think it will relate to everything that we just talked about, is business professionals, when they're creating content and they're putting it out there into their professional community, are often afraid to get too personal or to be lighthearted. It's almost like if I wear a suit and tie, I can't show people I have fun. Or if I sell multi-million-dollar deals, I don't want people to see my family, like the things I do with my family. So what's your thought as it relates to content distribution in those environments?
I'll give the acknowledgement that each industry is going to have its certain, I don't say preferences, but things that tend to work well. So there are certain times, in a very corporate environment, some things that would be, let's say, less appropriate than other environments in terms of how you present yourself, what you show off, how much you share and reveal certain things. And at the end of the day, everything is still human to human. It's not just business to business, still human to human. That's at the end of the day, we still go, can I trust? We have all of this psychology that says, can I trust this human being that's in front of me? Oh, they have a family that they're looking out for. Okay, well, I get that. I appreciate that. Oh, they have some imperfections. Well, I can relate to that. There's actually a thing in sales where if you're too polished, if you're too perfect, that elicits a bit of mistrust, because it's like something, first of all, it could be intimidating, but it could also be like something seems off. Like if a person has it so well put together that now you can't even connect with that and relate to that. So there still needs to be the humanity in it. And that's one of the benefits where I can't think of too many exceptions where if someone was like, I was really scared to put this story out there about something in my past that I had, I used to be a drug addict and I overcame it. Someone might say that's not my story, but someone had that experience, or, something about my family and the struggles I go through. It's so common, like a fear that they have. And almost every time when they really open up and are truly vulnerable and authentic, not with an agenda, not like I'm going to do vulnerability so people like me and give me money, but like a real sincerity behind it. It's almost always, they're like, oh my gosh, people really, they love that. They reached out to me. They wanted to do, they were interested in my business, right? I've had clients who were like, I just sent this email about my, thing I was struggling with. And, people, I got inquiries for, people wanting to work with me. Now, it's important not to come across like my whole life is in shambles and I don't have anything together and I'm so helpless and I'm throwing myself a pity party. That not usually going to work, but in admission of, hey, I've gone through some challenges. I'm still working, I've overcome it, but I have my challenges, or I am overcoming it and I'm optimistic about the future. And, or, hey, here's a sneak peek behind hey, this has nothing to do with business. This is, hey, we're having some fun with my family on vacation. This is one of the things why I'm really grateful that I have this life that I'm able to provide for my family doing this work that I do. And I want to help others be able to provide for their family as well. And, I believe family is important or whatever. So people connect on a values level. And when you talk about trust, when people can see your values are in alignment with their values, then that's part of what creates that know, like, and trust. And how are people going to know your values if they only see this small, tiny little dimension of your life and they don't see some of these other areas?
I really appreciate that. I mean, in the sense that, you know, when we're telling a story, we have to tell the whole story. And we hope that people stay around long enough to hear the whole story, because sound bites can be dangerous on both sides of things. One is, you know, when we're always talking about how terrible things are, people are like, gosh, like that person's so negative, and you're empathetic towards them, but it's like, I don't really want to be around them. But the other side is also really dangerous too, which is where a lot of people play, which is I'm killing it all the time. And people either think like, you know, I don't need to give that guy any business because he's making billions. Or back when we could actually like see people in person in business, I was up in Los Angeles doing an in-person workshop for a team on high performance teams and high performance habits, and integrating that both into the personal and work life. And I got about 3/4 of the way through the conversation, and this guy calls me out and he goes, dude, that's really easy for you to say. He goes, because you're really successful and you're doing so well. And I go, hold on a minute. I go, first of all, I said, that's not true. I said, I apologize if that's the way it came across. And I said, as a matter of fact, I said, in the midst of, and at this time it was early 2020, I said, so in the midst of 2019 being the most lucrative year and fulfilling year of my life, which it was, I said, I also had the biggest anxiety attack I've ever had in my entire life. And I broke down just a tiny bit of that story just to be able to help him see that, like, the reality is we can live in both of these, you know, like both of these things can exist in our world. And as soon as I shared that with him, it was like everything opened up, and he became the most participatory person in the class, or, you know, in the workshop. I ended up doing one with them again just a couple of months ago. It was all virtual, and he was one asking questions and having conversation. So I do think it's important that we create some balance in whatever it is that we're doing. Again, not to create pity, not to just exude all this confidence and, you know, killing it state, but I do think that we have to play somewhere in the middle so people can really get to know us for us and determine whether or not they want that human-to-human connection with us personally.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And you demonstrated this perfectly in that, you know, some people, they're going to be closed off if they go, yeah, you're, you know, you got it all together. You're so lucky. You're just, you know, you have maybe these special opportunities. You don't know what it's like to be me. And so when you show your humanity, when you show your imperfections that we all have, now all of a sudden that allows them to open up and connect. And a great speaking coach, Pat Quinn, says, he puts it like this: you need to show people how you're ordinary and how you're extraordinary. And how you're extraordinary and how you're ordinary. So you had the extraordinary part, which is creating a disconnect until he saw well, actually, no, you are human too. And then he could connect with that and then appreciate the extraordinariness. And it's exactly what you're saying, because if it's all extraordinary, they don't connect. But if it's all ordinary, why am I even listening to you in the first place?
That's good. Okay, we're starting to wind down, but I did see something on your website that I'm interested to see if you open up the kimono to, or maybe this is just way too top secret. As you can see, I have the letters BA on my hat, and behind me, up on my whiteboard, it's Be Authentic. It's just something that I deeply believe in and I tell other people about. So I saw on your website that you guys do something along the lines of authentic influence. Can you share any of that at all? Like, is that an approach, a method, something super secret that they have to pay you to do?
Yeah, there's nothing secret. There's nothing for sale with that. To me, it's a mindset of, you know, my passion is well, multiple passions, but a big thing is influence, psychology. You hear that a lot of this isn't just like, how do you, you know, write an article or shoot a video or something like that. To me, I come from the copywriting, direct response marketing world, where it's very much about how do you influence and persuade someone to take action. You know, content, just to have content doesn't really mean much. It needs to engage them, entertain them, pull them in, actually lead them to, you know, growing your business, rather than just, you know, throwing stuff out there. So you say, I got a bunch of content. So for me, it comes back to influence. And when I think about influence, one of the, you could call it a mistake, if you will, if we go that angle. It's a mistake to me when people get so caught up on the tactics and the techniques, and they don't realize that all the techniques will fall apart or actually backfire if there's not something authentic or congruent behind it. So if I give you like a headline formula to use on an article or on a video or on a podcast show or whatever, but it feels really forced and contrived, and it's not at all how you would talk, it's going to come through. Even if people do check it out and they see a lot of your content is structured in a certain way that doesn't match how you actually show up when you talk to them, then they're going to go, something is off. Or, you write Facebook ads with one type of personality, but it doesn't at all match the branding of the company. It's inauthentic. So I'll give an example of a good way of doing it is company Rev, a transcription service.
Yeah.
They are great. Their content, I love their content in the sense that they use a lot of humor, right? And this is a beautiful example of a very just functional company. Like, it's a transcription service. It's just what is there? Like, but they have funny blog posts and they use humor as part of their personality and their content. And so that's you expect that then from the company, and that's authentic for them, and it works. Someone trying to be funny who is not funny, it'd be weird. So this is one of the things, if you're showing up on videos and in your writing, it takes practice to be you, which sounds a bit paradoxical, right? Probably because you're more unlearning certain things. But when I give feedback on people's content or their ads or their emails, all of this is on content or their copywriting, and I look at it and I go, I've talked to you. This doesn't sound like you. This is really robotic. This feels forced. It feels like you're trying to just copy someone else's thing and paste it over. And they're like, yeah, I know, I don't like it either. And it's like, well, where did that come from? And it's like, well, I'm trying to do what this person did. And there's something to be said for modeling, but it's trying to force it over. And that's where you lose the influence if it's not authentic. And I'll give a quick example. I heard this. It was, I think John Carlton, a great copywriter, he would write ads for like self-defense stuff. And, in these self-defense ads, it would use adjectives, vicious, vicious eye gouges or whatever. And someone like takes that model and did it for like a salsa dancing thing, like vicious head spins. And it just like doesn't work. There's another famous ad, like Secret of the One-Legged Golfer, and someone just like swiped it like Secret of the One-Legged Accountant, and it's like, no, a one-legged golfer is intriguing. How does that work? A one-legged accountant doesn't make sense. So that's when people just get so caught up in these marketing tactics and techniques that they don't take a step back and go, wait a second, what's actually real? What's authentic? What's called for in this situation? And when you have that as your foundation, a lot of times the downstream effect is you can actually not have all the techniques. You cannot have all the little strategies and still be effective.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, that really does support so much of what I work with my clients on, which is, you have to take the time to get to know yourself in order to then become the best version of yourself outwardly. And then that's paired with the patience to allow other people to get to know you once you begin with consistency, communicating that person that you've learned to become. And so I think where a lot of the mistakes come into play, which is, which you shared, are because people are, sometimes it's just the desire to be like somebody else, which we all have that. And again, you said there is some wisdom or benefit in certain spaces to do that. But I think more often than not, it's the impatience to be where other people are before we're ready to be where they are. And so I just love this idea of like, let's make our content, which it sounds so simple, like authentic. It should be about us. It should be our voice. You should be willing to sacrifice the benefit for the sake of protecting the integrity of you, your character, your nature, your delivery, your service, your product, whatever. Too often it ends up working in the inverse, and eventually it backfires, or you end up finding yourself in a very successful place and you ask yourself the question that I asked myself back in 2017, which is, what the hell am I doing with my life? Like, I had it all and it just didn't feel right. And so I think that there's just a lot of disconnect that comes into play. So I love the fact that you shared so many great tips on where to pull content from. I think even just simple ways to get started in that, finding your unique voice in the midst of that. How do people go about engaging you, your firm, and what do some of those early goings of a relationship look like?
Yeah, best way to get in touch, it's my website, which is a little, you probably want to check the show notes, but I'll spell it out for you because my last name is a little unusual. So it's derekdoepker.com, DerekDoepker.com. And that has a free content that sells guide. And this will take you through the 5 formulas and also help you lay out. I have like this, it's like a grid that's a content creation map where it shows you how to fit the formulas in with the different topics. So that'll help you schedule out if you're going, I don't really know where to begin or what content to create or how to come up with all of it. That's meant to be a quick start guide that gets you into the content creation process. And you'll find, some formulas work better probably for one type of business than another. However, they really are designed to be universal across different types of businesses. So that would be the best way. And then if you want to reach me, you'll be on my email list, but Derek@DerekDoepker.com is how you can connect with me.
Okay, so I'll throw both of those in the show notes. Anywhere on social media, they can creep on you for a little bit to determine whether or not they want to do business with you.
Yeah, if you search my name, you'll find my work on there. And I do content marketing. I do a lot with people who want to write a book as well. That's probably what you'll find a lot of too. That gave me, the authorship world taught me a lot about how to create content, which is then now helps in all the different areas of business.
Awesome. Well, Derek, I appreciate it. I was stoked to be able to connect with you online, to jump on a call, to get to this place. I think this is, in one sense, this seems so simple to people. And yet, I think that this is one of the key areas that people are missing in becoming the most successful they can in whatever profession that they're pursuing. They're training on sales, they're training on business, they're adding all these tools and tactics to all of these other areas. And yet, this idea of understanding my story and the stories that I need to tell, and then finding the best places to go tell them, is just something that's been missed for far too long. And hopefully people really pay attention to the simple things that have been shared and begin to execute them. So thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on here, Ryan.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, that wraps up another episode of the podcast. As always, feel free to jump into the show notes. You can connect with Derek there. Make sure that we have all of the right links to his website, to his email. If you have any questions, concerns, please reach out to me. Let me know. I'm happy to take in any feedback you have. Go to whatever platform you're listening to this on, like it, share it. Appreciate all of the support that you guys give to me. And as always, I want to continue to remind you that if you want the most out of the life you're living, be the best version of yourself. Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to Authentic Conversations with Ryan James Miller. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and share it with others. To connect with Ryan and learn more, visit ryanjamesmiller.com.